Morning, folks. And so we are attempting to get the program on track. But the minister was saying he's an outsider to this audience, but I also feel the same way. And I think the only professor who is talking here. So I'm going to take class. Okay, so that's the best thing I know. I can't talk about technology, manufacturing. Certainly not talk about diagnosis and medicine. So I'm going to talk to you about what is this thing called AI. It's my little bit of take on it. We have heard enough about it. It was a marvelous first session. And if I had known that I was going to follow that session, I would have used half the slides I'm using now. But let me flip through things very quickly. So AI is hot. We saw that in the previous session already. So AI began in 1950 when Turing asked this question, can machines think? But then slowly it evolved into something that where replicating human behavior became the hallmark of intelligence, not necessarily thinking like humans, right? And so we had machines that could prove theorems. Of course, Deep Blue has already had 2 mentions so far. Machines that can play chess and beat humans. And then you had more recent success stories like IBM's Watson, which could beat humans on a general quiz program, right? But what was common to all of these, right? So they were actually solving problems that humans were good at solving. And they tried to do things like search for a solution. Did not use a fixed formula or a process. Think of putting numbers in order versus trying to make a move in chess. So you're not using a fixed formula for solving the problem, right? They use what are called heuristics, right? And more importantly, these systems actually attempted to use logic and reasoning, right? And they used encoded forms of prior knowledge, right? So in fact, Watson had one of the largest collection of human knowledge codified in a form which a computer could reason over, right? And so one could think that they were trying to push towards human-like thought, not just human-like behavior, right? But then what's about all this adaptation, learning, and machine learning that we are talking about? So notice that I have put machine in quotes there. So the basic idea behind machine learning is you're learning functions from input to the output from data. So you're given a huge volumes of data. So here is a very famous example from something called ImageNet, where you're given pictures of objects and you're told what these objects are. And you're given thousands of these examples and you expect a machine to learn how to go from these examples to the label, to the category, right? So earlier you did not have this kind of data. So when you are playing chess, when Deep Blue beat Kasparov in chess, it was not learning from data, right? It was a fixed search program that knew the rules of chess and knew which positions were good, which positions were bad, because humans had told it which were good and bad, and it was reasoning with that. So we have moved to a different era of trying to produce human-like behavior, where we did not have human knowledge encoded, but we are just trying to learn from data. But again, this is not new, right? So this is back in 1958, an article somebody wrote about a machine learning system back then. Right? If you look back on it, right, it looks laughable, but it is certainly no less than some of the hype we hear now. Right? I don't know how many of you are actually reading it. So I'm talking about the Navy revealed the embryo of a computer that it expects will be able to walk, talk, see, write, reproduce itself, and be conscious of its existence. And this was back in 1958. Okay? So our hype engines are just catching up to those levels now. Right? So it's not like we're there yet. So why again do we have this hype? So this is a snapshot I took from an advertising brochure in 2018, which essentially says, oh, machines can now see, think, and talk, right? As opposed to being able to see, think, and talk in 1958, right? So what happened? Why are we all getting excited? Most of you know the answer. It's all due to something called deep learning. And this was already alluded to in the earlier session. So we are achieving superhuman performance. You can see that. The human error rate on this ImageNet task is about 5%. Actually. And so machines have reached about 3.6% now, and they are continuing to push the envelope. And automatic speech recognition, the solid straight line you see up there is human level accuracy, and now machines are able to do better than humans, right? Of course, I mean, always men had difficulty understanding women, but machines don't seem to have any of those, right? So it does much better than that. And of course, we have come from really long way in talking to having natural sounding conversations with your voice assistants and art. So we come to a point where computers can produce art. And what is amazing about all of these artistic output you see is that they were all produced only from data. Right? The computers were not told what is art, right? What makes something aesthetically pleasing, but just given thousands and thousands of samples of what is aesthetically pleasing. And it got there. And of course, we have all this, again, the new generation of game-playing engines that keep trouncing humans. That's okay, we can give them that. So the current thinking, so this is where I'm going to differ from session 1, and also the introduction that we had in this session. The current thinking is all you need to succeed is large volumes of data, preferably tagged data. Some human being has looked at it and tagged it, but now we are coming to a point where if you have large volumes of data, even if it's not tagged, we can use it very well, right? And some problems don't even need the data, you just need a simulation model, like you played with the Go engine and so on and so forth. And a lot of the investment now in building successful products goes in generating the data, right? And you have all these catchphrases, data is the new oil, data is the new water, and so on and so forth. I'm fine, right? We are in an era where we are actually getting non-trivial things happening with AI again. Right? So when ELIZA came, that was a major boon to the medical diagnostic community back then, because it had an automated clinical decision system. Right? Now nobody knows about ELIZA. Right? At one point of time, it was touted as the next big thing in technology for medicine, right? Which was a rule-based system. So again, so we are at a point where we are making significant changes, and it's fine when the going is good, right? So I have some examples here, and the machine is trying to describe what is there in the picture. So a person riding a motorcycle on a dirt road looks great. Group of young people playing a game of frisbee, great. So what happens when the going is not good? So the computer thinks that is a little girl in a pink hat blowing bubbles. So why did you do that? I mean, if I want to ask the computer, why do you think she was blowing bubbles? Right. Is the computer ready to answer that yet? Well, people have made some attempts. So here is one of the more popular ways people try to explain things. So I don't know how clearly you can see the picture on the left. There is a dog and a cat in the picture. Right? And then you ask the computer, say, why did you say there is a cat in the picture? And it highlights some part of the picture. The one in red is the reason the computer is telling you that it said there's a cat in the picture. And it's literally like the hind part of the cat. Right? If you ask a human, why did you say there's a cat in the picture, it'll probably tell you something about the face of the cat, the ears, and something like that. But for some reason, the computer has latched on to the tail, or the hind, actually, not even the tail, the hind part of the cat. And similarly with the dog, it captures some small portion of the face and so on and so forth. Right? It's an explanation, if you will. Right? Somebody said it is like trying to take a CAT scan of the brain and saying what a human is right now thinking. Right? So we are not quite there yet. Right? But it becomes more critical in healthcare. So I'm going to play out a hypothetical conversation between, it was serendipity. I didn't even know the previous session was going to have a talk on retinopathy. It's not that I wanted to pick on that as an application. But Google has been making enough noise about it, so I needed to pick on them. So deep networks have found great success, right? So explanation. So hey, why do you think, right, this patient has DR? At whatever level of DR that you put it in, right? It says, this region in the image looks exactly like the ones I saw only in people with DR. Therefore, I think he has DR. Well, that's the best. That's the state-of-the-art explanation that you can provide with AI right now. Right? And but that's just normal age-related macular degeneration. That's me telling the agent, but there is normal age-related macular degeneration. And the agent goes, you did not show that to me earlier. Right? It's your fault. Well, I mean, the last part doesn't really happen because technology is not there yet. But the point is, you did not show that to me earlier is actually the valid reason here. And whether it was your fault or not, or whether it was my fault or not, is debatable. In fact, that is a debate that is not happening enough in AI. So that is one of the points I wanted to make, is that you have to really think about how reliable the systems are. And this is why I really like the way Aravind Hospital is using it, because they have so much checks and balances in place when they are actually using automatic grading system. So that is the way we should do it, and we have to be very careful about it. So how robust is AI? Here's an example. So that's an image. So it predicts it's a school bus. Okay? So now I'm going to add some noise to it. Okay? And guess what's the answer? You can see the image. Ostrich. Okay? And so robust, no, really not. Okay, you can always think of adding what are called adversarial perturbations to the images, right? And it can give you all kinds of crazy answers. So the panda becomes a gibbon, the school bus becomes an ostrich, and the dog becomes an ostrich, okay? And so it need not always be adversarial. That's the point, right? Here people can say, oh, because you're attacking it. It could very well be because it's a very, very rare case, right? And so data might have some kind of unidentified sample bias and so on and so forth. We don't know these things. You have to be very, very careful. When I say that I'm selling you something that can solve diabetic retinopathy, or anything, right? In fact, I wanted to pick some examples with the startup that I worked on, but I thought this might be better. So the fundamental problem, we just learn associations from data. So we have no knowledge of the structure of the world, right? A wheeled ostrich, really? Right? I mean, why would I think a school bus is an ostrich, right? So, nor of the processes of the world, right? You don't know. A doctor would tell you why some artifact is the reason for the diagnosis. He will not say, oh, I think you have this disease because the last 100 patients who walked into my hospital had that disease, right? So you need to have some of these. So the way forward, current ML systems understanding of the world, I would say is about a 2-year-old. So, so you need to integrate it with more classical AI, logic, reasoning, go beyond that, talk about causal structures, process models, et cetera, We are a long way to human-like performance, but you have to still handle it in care in the meanwhile. I said it is a 2-year-old, but it's not any 2-year-old, it's more like this 2-year-old. Okay? So if you just let it loose in the world, it can cause a lot of damage. So summing up, a lot of excitement, but you need a sense of responsibility. You need to have discussions focused on regulations. Now you have to ask the question, was it really your fault or the AI's fault when I make a mistake? That's a question people need to ask. Okay? Thank you.
Going to end the session. So